Okay, we are at 7 o'clock and I see we've gone live, so I think we ought to call the meeting to order. Debbie, if you've noted attendance, and let us begin with flag salute. Flags off to my left. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. So we are going to start with our agenda review here, item 3. And we did have a request to swap the discussion items regarding the first readings, to move them up ahead of administrative reports. And I think that's perfectly fine. They would replace, basically 9 and 10 would swap, if you will, essentially. And so I move that we do that to help some folks out. And I guess I'll make a motion that we do that.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any concerns about the request? Nope. Debbie, would you click that?
Jonathan?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Tom?
Aye.
Aaron?
Yes.
Janet? Yes. Owen?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor?
All right. Are there any other requests for amendments to tonight's agenda? Okay, with that, I would accept a motion to approve the modified agenda based on our previous vote as published and as recently modified.
I move to approve the amended agenda.
So moved.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Tom?
Aye.
Aaron?
Yes.
Janet? Yes. Owen?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
All in favor?
Perfect. Thanks, everybody. All right, well, that'll move us right into our consent agenda, and it is published on Board Book, and I would at this point accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Janet? Yes. Owen?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor?
All right, thanks, everybody. Well, that moves us to item number 5, our student reps.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting us here. We're happy to be here, and here's a little bit about us. I'm Grace Hernandez, and I use the pronouns she, her. I've participated in ASB all 4 years at my high school, and I currently hold the position of ASB president, and I'm a very avid CrossFitter.
My name is Bjorn Domst. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the senior class president this year. This is actually only my first year in ASB, although I've wanted to be involved in previous years. And I do varsity soccer and track as well as choir. All right, so starting off with our fall sports, we have boys soccer. They're still undefeated. They beat Woodburn for the first time in 27 years just this last week and have an overall ranking of 6th in state. Girls soccer is also doing well. They have a record of 3-3-1, and they're sitting 10th in state. They have a streak of 4 home games beginning tomorrow at 7 p.m. versus North Salem. Volleyball is currently 3rd in state. They're also doing pretty well. They also received a high honor of the Les Schwab Tire Team of the Month, and they recently hosted a teddy bear toy drive last Thursday, and they have a pink out game this Thursday. Cross country, they're into their final 3 weeks of the conference season, and they have 53 athletes. 43 of them PR'd over this last week in their 5K, and the boys and girls are both fighting hard to get to the 4th place seat in the Mid-Willamette Conference to go to the state meet on the 30th. And then football is also doing very well. They're currently 5-1 with their only loss being against 6A school Tigard, and their defense has only conceded 11 points per game so far this season.
Our clubs that we have to report on tonight are the Red Cross Club. They have their first blood drive on November 9th. Theater is currently planning a movie night and their annual haunted house. They are working they are working with the school administration to follow the COVID precautions as well as they possibly can in those events to make them safe. And Key Club started up again. 2 weeks ago they had their first meeting, and they had 30 students show up to this meeting where they elected their officers and are starting to plan how they can get involved with our community again. ASB has been doing quite a bit over this past month or so that we've been in school. We kind of hit the ground running with our homecoming stuff, which honestly happened very quickly. We did our hallway decorating, and that was a success. The juniors took first in that, but we don't have to talk about it. And then we did a few different things this year. We had an open house so the community could come see our hallways. We actually had a pretty good turnout for it only being the first year, not advertised as much as I think we would have hoped, but we were just so busy with everything that it was kind of crazy. We did the bonfire this year on a Thursday after a home girls soccer game, and that was really nice to see our community come support the girls soccer team, which typically don't get the biggest crowd, unfortunately. And then the bonfire was okay. I don't know if anybody heard anything. Anyway, Friday was the football game, and we did win that football game. The senior couches were fun, and our principal and our assistant principal barbecued for all the seniors, which was very kind of them, and they did not have to do that. And then Saturday, the dance went very smoothly. I think a lot of the teachers, the feedback we got from the chaperones, they said that was like the best dance they've ever been a part of. We did it outside in the courtyard where all those lights are and stuff. We had a photo booth, and the DJ was great. All the students had lots of fun, especially since they couldn't do it over the past, I don't know, year and a half, well, a very long time. And now we're kind of wrapping up our things. We're sending out thank you letters, and we're ready to start on Tree of Giving, which personally is my absolute favorite time of the year. If you don't know what Tree of Giving is, it's where ASB works with the Women's Zenith Club and our high school and Sequoia Academy just down the road to help get Christmas presents to the kids in our community who don't necessarily have the funds to get them. And we also buy them, like parents can request for their infants to be put in the Sequoia, this is Women's Zenith Club, and we can buy them like diapers and coats and stuff that they need. And then we also, if they want a toy, we try and get that toy. And we do fundraising through our school for that. And that will go about next week, the start of next week, until right before winter break is when we'll give all this stuff away.
All right, do you guys have any questions or comments, feedback for us?
No, I appreciate you guys sharing, and makes me want to hear more about the bonfire.
Maybe we shouldn't talk about that.
It was short.
It was about 30 minutes. It was very interesting. I didn't want to be there. Okay.
You would have to describe that, because that wasn't actually it.
I don't think we should talk about that. The students got a little out of hand, and Drescher ended up shutting it down,
Yeah.
which was definitely for the best.
Fine.
It was all right.
Fair enough, thank you.
Yeah, anyway, thank you, and we appreciate all of you listening to our report, and we'll definitely be back. Have a wonderful night, and go Foxes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, that moves us to item 6, SFEA.
Good evening. So I was thinking on the way over here, last time I saw you guys, well, the only time I've seen you guys, was at our August meeting. And when I walked in here, that was a little shocking to me personally as a teacher. Just the mask mandate thing had come out. And I remember sitting and thinking how respectfully you guys handled yourselves and how respectfully you responded to the crowd, and how much I appreciate that personally, but how much I heard other teachers say they appreciate that, and just instills a lot of confidence. So thank you for that. And I also remember being a lot more tan and more well-rested and thinking, I don't care what I have to put on as long as I get in front of some kids. I truly remember that. And so right now, we are going into our 6th week with students. I see at the high school about 200 kids on any given day in my room, and they are, without a doubt, like the best part of our day. I think you could ask anyone here, there's staff here. The kids are the best part of our day, and they entirely and wholly need to be with us, and we entirely and wholly need to be with them. They are doing okay, I would say, like the high school realm that I live in. They need a lot of feedback. I've told Dan Scott in our meetings, multitasking is not a thing for a teacher. In the rooms, I used to be able to kind of sit and have them do labs, and I could do stuff while they're doing it, but I am on my feet the whole time. They just need a lot of assurance and redirection, and it's a lot of hands-on, constant giving work. And I think we've all been a little bit taken aback by how difficult it's been. And I know I'm going to speak for admin as well here and in the buildings. It's just been really, really challenging. We've got kids that are absent a lot. That can be for quarantine or just general kind of chaos that's come out of this. We've got a lot of kids with like anxiety, a lot of kids that just need a lot of special care and a lot of follow-up. And so about 2 weeks ago, our group reached out to district office, and we had some really good conversations about what could we do to make this more sustainable, because I was really getting to the point where I was getting worried that some of our staff, it was just too exhausting. And I think we came to some really great agreements. Scott and Dan were gracious in that way. We scaled back some expectations that could wait a little bit. Our admin came along and helped kind of support us so we can get some things done faster, because honestly, there's just not enough time in the day. Like, I'm gonna leave after public comment and go home and write 3 tests that I need to give, because I can't give them the same test I gave before the pandemic, because the kids need something else. And so what I wanted to do was have teachers come share with you. I think as a board, it's really important, if we're gonna be a functional group together, you need to understand what it's like to work during a pandemic in our different buildings. I hear from teachers, but I don't know what it's like to work in grade school. So I've asked some people if they'd be willing, and they're bravely stepping forward. And the intent of this, and I've already told Dan Scott, this is not like lodging complaints or anything like that. This is simply an intent to communicate and an intent to inform, so that you understand these buildings that really are our passions and have our complete devotion. And I think it's really important that you understand. So that's all I have for you, but some staff will be speaking during public comment. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions at all? I was not at the bonfire, I will note. Nothing to add there.
Well, I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Allison. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that moves us to OSEA, who are up next.
So I see Danielle Michelle Livingston is an attendee. Can we promote her to panelist? Yep.
I'm on. Hold on.
Yep, we can see and hear you, Michelle.
Okay, I'm echoing at myself. Okay, does that still sound okay to you?
Yes, I guess you can't, yes, it does.
Okay. Hello. I'd like to start by saying this past month has been rough for our staff. We're battling tighter and constantly changing restrictions. We're being short-staffed and product shortages in both our food service and maintenance departments. We're doing our best to minimize impact to classrooms and students, but it's becoming increasingly difficult. I'd like to touch a little bit more on the short staffing since it includes all industries. What we're seeing here is a demand for workers, but no real benefit for a person to get hired here at the school district instead of somewhere else. As an example, our PERS was recently changed, and the district made no attempt to help solidify or sustain the once acceptable level of our retirement that people look forward to working for schools. All staff took this hit. Due to these staffing shortages, those that are here doing the job this year, and especially those that stepped up for in-person instruction last year, are being burnt out with no light at the end of the tunnel. We've had many this year work a couple weeks and quit. I've never seen turnover like this in the first month of the school year. Maybe incentives for new employees, as well as those that are putting in extra efforts, should be at least discussed in order to help compete for quality staff in a world that's currently full of opportunities like we've all never seen before. As a whole, our members are overjoyed to have students back in the classrooms, receiving quality education that our district provides and continues to provide. Despite the many challenges, we will still work hard for the students as well as our members. Thank you. That's what I have.
Well, thanks, Michelle. Appreciate you sharing.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Michelle? Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Great. That moves us to our first public comment. And we have a new statement, and I'll begin by reading that. We are glad you are here and welcome you to address the board at this time with your ideas, concerns, or compliments. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand to be recognized the board chair if you're out here. Or if you're attending remotely, please email Board Secretary Debbie Bella or put your request in the chat feature of the Zoom or the hand raise if it's available in Zoom. Before beginning your comment, please provide, for the record, your name, address, and relationship to the district and the subject of your comment. In order to ensure equity among speakers, remarks are limited to 3 minutes per individual. If a group of 3 or more wishes to appoint a representative, the comment time will be extended to 5 minutes. And there's a second public comment period later in the meeting agenda that is specific to discussion and action items of the meeting. Please be aware that the board's role during the public comment period is to listen. Rarely will members of the public receive an immediate response to their questions or comments. Finally, the board will not hear complaints against individual staff or board members during the public comment period. Remember that we all model the way for our students. We ask that you share your thoughts respectfully and in accordance with the board's decorum policy. Thank you. Anybody in the audience wish to share? Come on up. You can, and if you just state your name and affiliation to the district, et cetera, that would be appreciated.
Okay, so my name is Joni Short, and I'm a first grade teacher at Robert Frost, and so I'm actually coming to represent teachers at Robert Frost. I'm one of the teachers that Allison asked, so I was hoping to get 5 minutes. And I'm going to just read what I wrote. So, I have been teaching in the district for nearly 7 years, transitioning from Eugene Field to Mark Twain, and this year to Robert Frost as it became a K-5 building. I was a member of the K-5 work team that met during the 2018-19 school year, tasked with looking at overcrowding in multiple schools within the district and specifically looking at whether transitioning Mark Twain and Robert Frost to K-5 buildings was a recommendation. As a work group, we came to consensus that we would recommend this transition to the board, and that recommendation was presented to the board on April 8, 2019. When COVID hit in March of 2020, This slowed the progress and planning to move ahead. As part of our work group, there were many additional recommendations, including an attendance boundary committee, which did happen, a support plan for staff, a phase-in plan for existing students, a mitigation group, and further work on the district long-range facility planning committee. Many of these other committees and much of the other work that we were concerned about as a work group did not happen. As a result, many teachers moved schools, but a foundation of culture, belonging, and unity has not been present as we've started the school year. At Robert Frost, it very much feels like we are a primary school and an intermediate school living in the same building without shared culture or understanding of one another. When I talk to individuals, we all want to be one K-5 building, but we simply haven't been allotted the time to get into that work. Building a new shared culture takes time. If anything could help us at Robert Frost right now, it would be pausing some of the required meetings in order for us to have time to build community. We want it and we need it. It is said that teaching is a work of the heart, and for me, it couldn't be said more perfectly. I put my heart into this work, and I love being a teacher. I love being a teacher in Silver Falls. There have been hard moments many times, but the COVID-19 pandemic has far surpassed any difficulties of the past. And you know, we are now in our third academic year affected by this pandemic. I am incredibly grateful to be back in the building 5 days a week with kids, and I commend the district leadership and our board for making this decision. Oh boy, lost my spot. Oh, and making that a priority. It is truly best for kids to be back in school, and I am grateful to be with them. But with this great privilege, as it is said, comes great responsibility, and the responsibility this year is heavy. Most buildings are still short-staffed. I counted 31 openings today on the district site. We are also experiencing a substitute shortage unlike anything I've experienced before. At Robert Frost, we have yet to have a single licensed sub-absence filled this year, and most of our classified absences have gone unfilled as well. While we have created a plan for this and how unfilled absences get covered or do not get covered in some cases, none of these plans are good, and they all put extra stress, work, and duties on the staff who are in the building on those days. Classified staff are pulled from their regular duties, teachers are left without preps or assistants, and some of our most vulnerable and marginalized students end up missing services they desperately need in order to backfill gaps from the last 2 years. We are also managing keeping students distanced, cohorted, and following much stricter cleaning and tracing protocols than ever before. In addition to being short-staffed, having unfilled absences, and significantly increasing our safety measures, we are struggling to maintain online classroom platforms for students who are COVID positive or who are quarantined. Sometimes this happens overnight, and a teacher is actually working from home overnight to trace and identify quarantine cases, as well as upload online work for those students who won't be in class the following day. I will be honest, because honesty is the best policy, I haven't even started sending iPads home with my students. I know I'm supposed to do it, but I simply haven't been able to get to one more thing. And the thought of how many of them will be left at home, making the next day in class just one more obstacle without a device, has just not been worth the stress. We are so grateful that our district leadership heard us and took a weekly meeting off of our schedules for unit mapping and gave us time last Friday to finish tasks from the beginning of the year. As we continue through this third academic year of the pandemic, please be gentle with us. Please be aware that we are frazzled, frayed, and some of us are very fragile. We are holding weight for so many children and families while also feeling the weight of our own pandemic experience. We are trying to hold it all together, and we will continue to lead and to educate because we don't do this work for a paycheck. We do it for the ripple effect, for the lives we will touch for generations beyond our classroom today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Come on up.
My name is Jessie Newton. I am coming as a Silver Falls School District teacher and parent. My address too. So I wanted to come and give a comment to the board tonight on two things. First, it's so wonderful to be back in the building with students. seeing them be back in the building and filling the halls just really like reignited some joy, I think, that all of us were missing. So it's awesome to see the building is alive with students again. My students also seem thrilled to be back in school. In the parent role, I can also comment that my own kids are doing really well being back in person. I have a first grader who spent her kindergarten year in distance learning and then hybrid, and she's really thriving to be back in school 5 days a week. One of the challenges that has presented itself this year, however, as both a parent and teacher, is that of quarantine and COVID testing. So far this school year, nearly 6 weeks in, I have used 5.5 sick days to cover quarantined children, my own quarantined children. 2 of my kids got a basic cold and were able to return to school after missing 1 day because I was able to procure at-home COVID tests. These were very hard to locate and were found after I unsuccessfully tried to schedule PCR tests. And I don't know if any of you guys have tried to schedule one of these recently, but you're lucky if you can get an appointment 3 days out, and then it might be 4 or 5 days to get results. So all while I was surfing the internet, I was thinking how many days I was going to be out as a teacher and the kids as well. So my third child was exposed to a positive case in class and had to quarantine as well. She wasn't able to return even with a negative test. All 4 of us had negative tests, but we lost an accumulated 2.5 school days so far during this school year already. So as a teacher, quite a few of my students have been quarantined. I am putting course materials on Canvas, our learning management system, and doing my best to keep up after in-person teaching and trying to support them at home. But we all know there's a big difference between that and being in the classroom together. I bring up these challenges because I see the lack of available and free testing along with quick results to be a major impediment to student learning and staffing. This disproportionately affects students with fewer resources and other challenges. Currently, students and staff can only test if they become symptomatic at the school building, which creates a hardship for students and potential staff if they can't locate other testing that is timely or affordable. I know that we have many challenges right now, and I have seen nothing but really hard work coming from our administration and teachers. But we haven't even gotten into the cold and flu season. More and more students and staff will be waking up with scratchy throats and sniffles. If we aren't able to quickly and equitably rule out a simple cold or allergies, I am concerned that it will have an unnecessary impact on teaching and learning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Heidi Candy, and I teach math here at the high school. This is my 24th year, I think, with the district. So I've been doing this for a while. I just want to share a little bit about what's happening with the math teachers. We tend to be one of the most organized, efficient, team-oriented groups, I think, in the district, in the building. I mean, we pride ourselves on having our teams organized with all of our units are mapped. Our assessments are made. We work together as a team to bring about really good and challenging curriculum. But we started this year with 3 substitutes in the math department. 2 teachers were quarantined that first week, and we have a math position that is still unfilled. So we're on our second long-term sub in that position, but in the meantime, the burden upon us, unfortunately, is heavy, trying to keep our subs afloat, as well as our own lessons and our students. All of our lessons that we do have organized and mapped out, we are having to rework and modify each day. So our planning time is a toll on our hours. We're probably averaging about 11 hours a day, not to mention working on weekends and taking the computer home every night in order to make lessons that are going to work for our students and where they're coming in equipped with their math skills, which is not where they normally would be. And of course, we do this because we care. We want to build them back up, and we want to make it a successful, positive experience for them to be back in the building and not just leave them behind. So that's our hardest part, is trying to keep Canvas up to date, as well as our lessons that we teach in person, as well as some of our teachers are having to essentially do sub-lesson plans every day, in addition to their own lesson plans, in order to keep our substitute teachers afloat. And so that's definitely, this no one's fault. It's just so you know, if the math teachers seem particularly frazzled, we are. We are trying to keep everyone going. The other thing is that sorry, lost my place here. Get there. We would like to recommend something in learning from this experience of having the first week of school with 3 subs, to propose maybe for the future we have an onboarding for our substitute teachers where they learn all of the technology platforms and maybe are able, if they're going to be a long-term sub, to follow a teacher for a couple of days in the classroom in action so they can see all the technology and how we're doing the math lessons. So that's just something we wanted to recommend might be useful in the future. So that's it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
What's that?
I appreciate it.
Oh,
Sharon,
thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience? Anybody on Zoom got their hand raised, Daniel or Dan?
Hold on just a second. I do not see any hands raised on Zoom.
Okay.
I just want to say that all the teachers had their comments timed very well. Nice job.
That's right. Okay, anybody else in the audience? All right.
Jonathan, I had a question. I don't want to put this in the wrong spot, or if I'm out of order here, tell me to be quiet, but I just wanted to, if I could ask Scott a question based on some of the feedback we heard tonight, if that's appropriate.
It can happen if Scott would like to take it.
Go right ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, no, and teachers, thank you for coming in and sharing tonight. I know it was uber frustrating over the last year and a half when we went virtual school and online school and hybrid, and it's still frustrating now. It isn't over. It's not like we're back to school and everything's perfect. And I totally hear you loud and clear. And it seems like with the testing protocols and people, again, much of this is with the ODE, and I know we're behest of the ODE, Scott, on much of these protocols with, if you're exposed, you have to be out of school for such long. I've heard from many community members, people I've talked to, it's like a kid gets within a few feet of another kid who tests positive and they're out of school for 2 weeks, yet they're not having one sniffle, they're fine, but they still have to stay out. Scott, I was just wondering, is there what kind of how can we get this feedback back to the ODE? I'm all for safety, and I understand, and I think everybody in this room is for safety. But at some point, it gets to a point where it's ridiculous isn't the right word, and that seems a little bit too much, but it's putting a toll on our teachers, our administrators, on our students, on our parents. How does that feedback get back to the ODE that maybe things are being a little too cautious, too strict?
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I'll say about ODE is I communicate with Colt Gill on occasion. He always responds to me within 24 hours, and I'm always happy to give him my feedback. I just emailed him last week with a very strong set of feedback around transportation and clearing bus drivers. And on this topic, this logistical topic, and we are beholden to the guidance set out by the OHA and ODE, it would follow the same path. It would be superintendent communicating with the executive director of ODE. They are always very good at getting back to me in a timely manner, and I've gotten to know them quite well over this pandemic. So that, if that answers your question, Aaron, that's really where I would give the feedback, and then I meet about every 2 to 3 weeks, all the 197 superintendents, and I meet for our meeting with ODE and with other agencies as well. So, and we give we give a ton of feedback, I can promise you that, at that meeting as well. So I'm not sure if one of my team wants to comment on that.
Well, I'm sure we're not the only district obviously facing this, I get that. It's just, I just want to make sure that our voices are heard, and I appreciate you.
And it's really
directly having that conversation. That's the biggest thing.
Yes.
Is making sure that feedback is pushed up to change.
And I have heard that the testing is a major frustration.
Right.
It's a major frustration to those who can't get a test scheduled. It's a major frustration to the schools that can't have that staff member back, or students back in school. And for whatever reason, with the supply and demand, I guess, with testing, it's just become a major source of frustration for all parties.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys sharing
Yeah.
all of these issues. I
Thank
think,
you.
The testing one resonates with a lot of people, because I've got 2 kids that have had the same problem where they've missed days because we had to wait and find a test, and good luck. So, yeah, I get it.
And you offered the mic, so I never turn that down too
You're right.
often. So, I also want to say thank you for everybody speaking, and we have another meeting on Wednesday to problem solve. And I just, even hearing Heidi, your comment about having subs prepped, I mean, that's a communication part to our principals, because I would always, if we know we have a long-term sub coming in, if there's 2 to 3 days of working together, I need to communicate that out to the principals, because that's always a good investment in bringing subs in advance to do that. So I will communicate that out, that if we have subs coming in, let's get them a day or 2 to work alongside with the principal or the teachers, so that we get them onboarded quickly. Because we know what happens when that doesn't happen. It falls on you.
I appreciated the recommendation with the comment. Thank you.
Scott, do you think that, and thank you for your input, everybody, is there, you know us personally and have personal conversations with us,
Sure.
and you have conversations with them. Is there any commonality that, I'm not saying suggest it now, but just, is there a joint statement of things that we both sides agree on that we could send up the chain of command? And I'm not saying an answer now. Only you know them better than we do. You know us.
Sure.
Maybe you're the one who could come up with something like that. I know that something that I got a real specific example of something that frustrates me, and I know that we're short-staffed. As I understand it, there's no volunteers allowed in.
Mm-hmm.
I've got in my house
Right.
living right now a young biracial woman, bilingual, who has just worked a year right out of college, paid off her school loans, and is thinking, I might, education is something of interest to me. She has mentioned she offered to my spouse, to my wife, to say, hey, maybe I'll come help out for now and then. My wife says, well, we can't. It's just how it is. And so we have these things that we put in place to protect us, and that, I understand that impulse, and that's a good thing, but they also get in the way of I mentioned it a couple, 3-4 meetings ago, about serendipity, about the good thing that can just happen, and that's in the way right now.
Mm-hmm.
We got a real good opportunity right now in my house to just expose someone to the joys of teaching. Maybe she would like it, maybe she wouldn't. I don't know. She's not ready to get an application, Dan. I'm sure you got one for her, but that's not where she's at,
I was going to say, first of all, Tom, what is her first and last name?
Yes, exactly.
And secondly, and Leslie, you know the guidance even better than I do on volunteers and visitors. I'm pretty sure that, we're a little bit hamstrung by that as well. And of course, we're always happy to look at our practices too. Tom.
Sure, exactly. Those are just some of the things that, and she's going home in a few weeks anyway, but you never know. You can dangle the bait sometimes, and you never know. Sometimes you can set the hooks.
And how long is your visitor staying?
Only 2 more weeks.
Oh, not all
She said
year.
no for 2 more
normally
weeks.
you have
back
that
down to
exchange
California.
Okay.
And I assume the visitor/parent volunteer is another ODE mandate, correct?
Yeah. So.
We're getting to volunteers, but they have to follow the vaccine exemption. So right now, Dan is working through staff first before we open volunteers. So it's a work in progress.
Yeah, anyway, that's just, thank you. Thank you for your input and hard work. Thank you.
I wanted to say something. I hope I'm not echoing, but my husband and I have several friends that work in different school districts, and they too are echoing the same frustrations I think that we're hearing from individuals and the board members. And I don't feel like there's any magic, wand to fix it, but our school district is not alone, and that's all I wanted to say. I don't know if that's going to make us feel any better, but there are other districts that are struggling in the same way. It is frustrating, but it is. So that's all.
Yeah, thanks, Lori. It's definitely frustrating.
It is.
Okay, I'm going to move us into, we're swapping 9 and 10 basically, so we're going to move into discussion items. And we have a bunch of first readings for policies, as well as a single second reading and a number of final readings.
Thank you.
And we are going to jump right into those, and then after we're done with those, we will jump into our administrative reports.
Daniel, can you promote Dixon Bledsoe and Melissa Briggs to panelists, please? And Don Tacker, please.
Hi, Dixon.
Good evening.
Hi, Don.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, Melissa.
Hello.
All right, well, thanks, guys. So I'm going to go in the order that they're listed in our agenda. And as we have been accustomed to, when we go through each of the first readings, if whoever authored the cover sheet would give us sort of a verbal summary of what changed, why it changed, and what sort of the impetus was and what research you might have done, that's been really helpful. And the board's had the responsibility already of kind of reading through it, but having that dialoguing or the opportunity to discuss has been really great. Thank you. So we'll start with JECB, which is admission of non-resident students, and it comes with an AR.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen just so if that's easier for Dixon and Melissa, since they're both at home as well. This is one that we all worked on. And these are all, I'll just kind of take the lead on this, guys, and then let you jump in for some of the later ones. But these are changes mandated by a sunsetting law, and very little controversy here. The only thing that we did want to customize for the district was to set a date, and we had Janet go back and forth, thank you for that, Janet, with OSBA, and just made sure it was okay to set our own date to make sure that that was okay. We also, Melissa was kind enough to do a little research on weapons violations and student expulsions, and we confirmed that that was correct. So those are the major changes that we made.
Thank you. Board members, any questions, comments, or concerns with this?
I had just submitted on email some suggested rewording for number 2, which starts with tuition paying student. The sentence was a little clunky, and so I just suggested some rewording, which doesn't substantively change the meaning of the sentence, but I've sent that along via email, so the group can take a look at it whenever it's convenient.
Thank you. We appreciate that input. All right, other questions? All right, okay. I'm going to close this one out. And there's an AR that goes along with this. And again, all related to legal changes, dates that we okayed, and Leslie and Dan had a big hand on this one. They chose bracketed language and again looked at it together as a group to approve it.
All right, any questions, concerns? All right, thank you. We can move to KNAR, relations with law enforcement agencies.
All right. Hey, Dixon, do you want to take the lead on this one?
Sure, we thought it was really paramount to make sure that any of the policies that had implications for potential law violations, anything to do with the need to call in law enforcement, it was paramount to have that written in there, that there's some link to law enforcement if and when the time was needed. So we did go over several of these. Dan had reviewed and approved some of the changes. Some of the things that we dwelt on were the investigation of child abuse and clarified when the administrator, if the administrator would let an investigator in or not, and whether they would be ID, how they would do IDs, and if they didn't have IDs, how would we proceed? So I think the main thing that we wanted to ensure is that anytime that there was a potential link to any legalities, that there be a route to involving law enforcement if and when it was needed.
I have a question, if that's okay. When I was reading through it, I was wondering, did we have a chance, because so much of this may involve the rights of students and the rights of parents, have we had a chance to run it by either our district council or OSBA's lawyers? Anyone?
No, since most of these changes were OSBA suggested, we did not.
Oh, okay. Okay, so they came from them. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, the questions that we brought up as a group, Janet, were ones where we did a little more research, but because they didn't change, let me see if there's a good example. Yeah, so for example, point number 4 in our cover sheet, number 6, there was this phrase, if the student agrees, and we had a long discussion about that. Well, what does that mean? Can a 5-year-old agree to be interviewed? How about a 16-year-old? So we went back and forth over some of the finer points of that. And, you know, Melissa did end up doing a little research, I believe, on court order requirements. And again, where we found that the OSBA suggestions were not clear enough, we tried to make the language more clear. So point number 6 is a good example of that, that if for some reason an investigator does not complete a form when they're investigating child abuse, which we were really having a hard time coming up with a scenario where that could happen, but we clarified that the form will be completed by a district administrator in that case. So we sort of looked for loopholes or things that were not clear enough and just tried to clarify that language.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Okay, let's go to GBK, KGC, prohibited use, distribution, or sale of tobacco products.
All right, Melissa, do you want to take the lead on this?
Yes, so this one, OSBA recognized that we actually have 2 policies that are the same. One applies only to students, and this one applies to students and staff and all others on campuses. So they took students out of this one, so we would only have one other policy. It's JFCG, JFCH, JFCI. That one's going to apply to students. So these changes removed everything about students from this policy.
Okay.
And there were 2, they had 2 samples, and we chose sample 2 because it was the most aligned with our current policy, so we didn't have to make that many changes. And I don't think we've made any changes from OSBA's suggested other than just a few grammar things.
All right, any questions?
Any questions on this one?
All right, thank you. Let's go to 10E. A lot of letters, domestic violence, harassment, sexual assault, or stalking leave.
So this is another one that Melissa spearheaded. I'm going to just bring it up above my screen. Melissa, I'll give you the summary section if that helps.
Yes, that helps. I think this is the one, yes, so administration asked that we add this policy. It had been an optional policy that our district did not have. So they asked for us to bring it to you. And then there were some updates that OSBA had done. We reviewed the policy, we did some edits for grammar, and then we spoke with Dan, and in the last paragraph there's some language about this leave is required, but how accrued leave, like sick leave, is used. We wanted to make sure that this policy was in line with how the district uses that leave in other policies. So Dan helped us with that.
Okay.
Any questions on this one?
No, let's go to the AR. There's a related AR tied to it.
Yes. So same thing. We didn't have this AR, so we needed it to go with the policy. Same sort of things. We did some grammar things, and then we made sure that the use of the accrued leave was consistent with other district policies.
Okay. How about JGA?
JGA, corporal punishment. All right, Dixon, do you want to jump in here, or do you want me to take?
You might want to lead and let me contribute.
You got it. Okay. So again, essentially, they moved this to an optional policy, but there were changes in the definitions and practices for use of restraint and seclusion in schools. So this, as a result, needed to be reviewed. So again, we found an opportunity to add a clause about referring to law enforcement. And you can see on the cover sheet where that's highlighted, or where the font is moved to orange text. So again, just two places we felt like that was important to do, but we did ask Janet again to liaise with OSBA, who reviewed this and agreed that it was a fine addition, and per their suggestion, we just made it its own separate small paragraph to make it more clear in the policy.
Okay, any questions? All right, how about JGE?
All right, Melissa, JED, student absences and excuses.
Gosh, I don't remember this one. Let me think. This one was just some updated laws that had to, so this policy had to be updated. It was pretty straightforward. We made some grammatical edits. I don't think there's anything too exciting in this one.
No, not much.
All right, JGE.
In fact, it looks like you didn't touch it at all. We just, took the...
I usually add commas to things, so that was probably all I did.
Mm-hmm. The calling out of mental and behavioral health, though, that's a new addition, right? Calling that out specifically.
Yes, that was required by the 2019 legislation that was passed. So yes.
Right. No, I think that's great. That's important to note. I think it's a positive step forward.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions?
How about JGE? Did I skip one?
Okay. Yep, you got it. JGE, this is policy around expulsion. So the important part here is this was dictated by House Bill 20 2514, basically taking out language limiting to medical records and student educational programs. So again, we kind of looked at this and we discussed that typical, is it typical to expel a student? We were curious about the length of expulsion. So we discussed that as a group. There were some minor language edits because we always try to improve these. And we changed the point 12 on the last page. We removed the term minor and then clarified the intent for internal and external alternatives. It wasn't clear to Dixon and I, because we're not on the inside of education when we were reading through that, what it was referring to. So we talked about that as a group and then made a slight change to clarify. All right, any questions on this one?
All right, so I think the next two, at least, are recommended for deletion. Do I remember that right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe three.
Correct.
Next, even three.
Yes, so we've got JHFDA, and Melissa, I don't know if you want to just give a brief overview of this, then we'll talk about which other ones are related that are deleting.
Yeah, so this was legislation from 2018 that repealed some statutes related to requesting the district's ability to request from Oregon Department of Transportation that suspended students' license. So it's no longer a law, so we can't do it, so the policy should be deleted.
So then related to that, we've got JHFDA AR1, JHFDA AR2, and those are our last two for tonight. So these are all deletions, no replacements, just due to that change in law.
All right, thank you. Any questions from anybody? Great job, guys. We really do appreciate this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we do have a second reading on JEC. We're not going to go through the overview. We would have done that prior. So anybody, though, that wants to discuss it, we can. So I'll go through each of these, starting with JEC. Okay, we also have several final readings. These are going to be voted on later tonight in the action items. So CM, compliance and reporting on standards. Anybody? Anybody have any, I'll just skip ahead. Anybody have any discussion on any of these final reading policies for tonight? All right, very good. Well, that was it for our discussion items, which moves us to administrator and staff reports, starting with 9A, Division 22 Standards Compliance.
Thank you, Jonathan. And this is a new due date for us. It's due November 1st, and which is why we're bringing it to you here at the regular board meeting in October. And we are in compliance so far as Division 22 is concerned. It's a little bit different this year because some items had been suspended for this year. And of course, we know how complicated last year was, but do any of you have any questions for us?
No? All right.
Okay, thank you.
So that'll move us to 9B, which is the long-range facility planning update.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. I am going to share screen here. Okay. Well, as part of my comments, I just want to bring you up to speed on where we are as a long-range facilities planning committee, the work that's gone into it, some context around where it started and where it will end, and most of all, most importantly, what's coming for you. Because we are wrapping up a very long process, and I wanted to start out, first of all, by just drawing our attention back to why it is that we have a long-range facilities planning committee to begin with. And all of you know that we had a strategic plan that was set in place a few years ago. And the third goal of that strategic plan was around facilities. That is a very rare thing in a strategic plan, to have a 1/3 of the goals devoted just to facilities. And I think there are many things that make Silver Falls School District unique in all the best ways. We truly are, there truly isn't another school district quite like ours, and that is a truly awesome thing. But the facilities are in conditions that are less than desirable, and all of you know that. I'm not telling you anything new, and that's the reason why it's in the strategic plan. So 1/3 of our goals has to do with facilities, and there's language in the strategic plan that talks about the fact that we need to have one, and we need to bring a long-range facilities plan to you for consideration. That's what we would call in the Long-Range Facilities Planning Committee a recommendation that we're going to make, and we're pretty close to that. And so I just want to give you some context around when this started. This whole process started back in 2018 with what we would call facilities assessments. So going around each facility, looking at the different issues of each facility and as a district and giving a broader view. And that's before the committee work even starts. So district always starts there with facilities assessments. And that took place, Andy Belando had organized that. That's what kind of kicked it off. And then we went directly into COVID. We had changes in district leadership, as you know, and we had different board compositions also throughout this process. We've also been through 2 extensions granted by ODE. The one was for 1 year, a 1-year extension because of COVID and all that, give us time to restart the process, kind of reboot it, reinvigorate the process. That was all of last year. So that was a 1 year. The second is a 60-day extension that we sought out because we still had work to do. We had some new board members coming on. Aaron was a committee member, now a board member. Owen is on his second go-around with the board, but we wanted time to bring Owen up to speed as well on this work. And as you know, that's the reason why we extended it into this fall as well. We've had 13 meetings so far. And from what I know, and working with the architects who work with school districts all over the state, that is close to a record for districts in Oregon. That it will have been 15 meetings spanning over a year and a half of long-range facilities planning, and discussion and consensus decision-making. And so it's been quite a long process, and we still have 2 meetings left. 1 in December and 1 in January. So that will be 15 meetings total. And as you know, we've also worked with 2 different architectural firms. The first one did the facilities assessment. That was an architecture firm called BBL. We're now working with BLRB. So we had changed architecture firms the year before I got here, and they had started what were called the educational adequacy assessments, where the firm goes in and they meet with the whole staff, they meet with the principal, they kind of list out what are your needs, what's been working well for you, what not so much, what's the impact to learning. And so as those wrapped up, we rebooted the Long-Range Facilities Planning Committee, and that happened last October, and we started those meetings. Some of you have sat in on those. And they actually started in November 2019. There was one meeting. All of you probably remember that meeting if you were there, or you've at least heard about it. There was that one meeting, and then everything kind of got put on pause. And then they were picked back up in October of last year. In terms of the meetings altogether, we have gotten really close to a recommendation. We know pretty much what improvements are needed. We also know that the biggest need, of course, is Silverton Middle School. A middle school replacement is what it's looking like at this point. And we're ready to take that recommendation to you, I think, in the January board work session. During that board work session, we will present it to you so you have plenty of time to go through the information, to ask questions, and then hopefully by the time we get to the February regular board meeting on the 14th, you'll be ready to vote. We need to wrap up this process, And we need to wrap it up for a couple reasons. One is the due date on our extension is February 28th. The second is we want to meet that due date because we qualify for other grants. There's a TAP grant for $25,000, and then in order to get the $4 million awesome grant, which would go towards a bond if we're able to pass one, we have to have a 10-year long-range facilities plan in place already. So there are some incentives for us to get this done as well. Now, I want to take a minute just because these documents you won't be able to read up there, but you have all of them. I sent them to you, gosh, at this point, 3 or 4 months ago. I've included them in various communications just so you have them. And this basically is the summary of the work to date by the Long Range Facilities Planning Committee. There's basically unanimous agreement, and I think, I've spoken to all of you, you've been clear with me, spoken with every stakeholder that I've had a conversation with, and all of the Long Range Facilities Planning Committees agree we need a new middle school. It's the middle school, to put it lightly, is a disgrace. We put a couple $1 million into it. We took out a loan from a local bank, and we made the improvements so it is safe. But it's connected to a condemned building. And it's not reflective of our love and respect we have for our kids. And I know that you all agree with me on that. We have got to get moving forward on what it will look like for our future for those kids in that middle school. And so I think it's a good thing that everybody agrees on that. I think if you've gone through the brochure that lists out what the new facility might look like, our job is not to figure out on the committee the design and all of that. That all comes later. The committee is basically just giving a recommendation on sort of the bigger picture things, on what that might include. So that's the middle school. But you have to ask yourself the question also, what about the 7 K-8 buildings that we have and the other in-town elementary schools, the 2 K-5 schools as well? Not only that, but the high school is also up for additional improvements as well. So that's listed on the second brochure. And we've used the term throughout each one of the meetings of warm, safe, and dry. And that actually ties right back to the language in the strategic plan about making safe environments, safe learning environments for staff and students. And that's really what we're after. So this is a comprehensive plan. It addresses all of our facilities in Silver Falls. And this is the information we'll present to you in January, when the committee has had time to come to a final consensus on what the recommendation is, and we'll be ready to do that then. We will be meeting back in December. The December meeting will be around a side project that we have going that's directly related to the long-range facilities planning work, and that is around our K-8 listening and learning sessions. This is a challenge that came up in every single one of the 13 meetings so far, and that is, what do we do with the idea around consolidating K-8s, making them into larger K-8 facilities, and how would our K-8 communities feel about that? The other thing that keeps coming up in these meetings is we've never asked them. And so from the first meeting all the way to the last meeting, last May, that question has come up. And so last May, I considered that direction from the committee to me to take it with me to form a work group to start to get to the bottom of how can we design a process that's formal and official where we can go into our K-8 communities and finally bring an answer to the question. Now, there are some that might say, well, this has been done before. I have not found one shred of evidence that that is the case. Not in a formal, thoughtful, and comprehensive way of asking our K-8 communities what they want their future to look like. And so this, to me, has been an amazing experience on so many different levels. It first started with creating a K-8 work group, 23 members, and we met to design the process that we would use to get to the bottom of the information we need to answer these questions, to be able to put it in a final findings report that I can bring back to the committee and then to the board. And one of the things that came out of the work group was we have to hold 7 individual listening and learning sessions. And looking at our calendars, it turned into be a very, very tight timeline. So that's a major reason why we went to ODE and pleaded with them to give us an additional extension, which is also very rare, so that we could have the time to do this right. In my opinion, you have one chance to do this, one royal opportunity to do it right. This is an issue that has buggered this community for 25 years. And it's about time we go in and being thoughtful about it and try to answer this question the best we can, put it into a findings report that can stand the test of time. And I would say we're well on our way. We will have the listening sessions wrapped up by the end of the month. We have Central Howell this week, then Evergreen, then Silvercrest, which we had to move from the beginning, from late September because of a technical issue. All have been extremely well attended. I would say that at each one, Butte Creek was our first one. We didn't know what to expect, so we were kind of, getting our bearings a little bit. Also a healthy turnout. Scotts Mills was the following day. I would say we had 85% of the students represented by their parents. It was a tremendous experience. The cows were mooing in the background. It was unbelievable because we're holding these outside. The next after that was Victor Point. I would say we easily had 90% of the students represented by parents at Victor Point. And at Prattham, we had more adults in the audience than kids attend that school. So I counted at least 75. We had 75 chairs and they were filled, plus people out on the grass. And 62 kids attend school there. And so it's amazing on so many different levels, but what we see are multiple generations of families represented, all who have a story to tell. Each story is different from the other in their experience of what it's like to learn in a small learning environment in a school that has been in their family for generations, something I have never experienced in my career and I don't think I ever will. So it's extremely special. Once those listening sessions are complete, I will have the first draft of the findings report done by November 19th. I'll need a couple weeks to format it correctly, make sure, fact check everything. We're putting in statements verbatim that we have received during these listening sessions, summarizing some and then some verbatim. We've got a strategy for that. We also have a separate section for concerns and challenges that our communities are voicing to us, having to do with just the normal course of frustrations during the pandemic, other frustrations that are going on. We wanted to give our parents a chance to really talk to us. Because as Brett Davison told me when I first joined the district, he said, Scott, everything in Silver Falls is connected back to facilities. This is coming from one of our best principals who has been in Silver Falls since he was a child, whose mother and grandparents were also educators in Silver Falls. And so far in my experience, he's proving to be very right about that. And so we'll have a second section for that, because I think it's important if administrators look at this document years from now, they're going to want to know what were the other things that were happening in the world that were affecting our school communities during this time. I think that's really important. So for posterity reasons, and because I don't think we can do this again as effectively as we're doing it now. You get one chance at these sort of things to build trust. The other important thing that we need to do, that I will be doing, is going back to each K-8 community after the report is published to show them exactly how we are using their feedback. So exactly how are we prioritizing the needs of that school community relative to their facility that's not maybe represented in the plan that I just showed you. That is incredibly important when we're talking about building trust between a district and distinct school communities, which for all intents and purposes, we're forced to unify. And so we've had this issue with trust around the district, and everybody knows it. We're not talking about anything mysterious here. But it is important that if we go in and we listen and we learn, that we are able to take that formulate it into a plan, and then deliver it back to those communities to say, this is how we've used your feedback, instead of just saying thank you for your time. So that's another important piece, and I will be doing that throughout the month of December. I'll be coming back to the committee in December right after that, and then we will include this report to the board in the January work session, along with the long-range facilities planning recommendation. So you should be set up as a board to take that with you and study it and ask questions, and we'll have a chance for public comment at the February 14th regular board meeting. And so far, I would say in my experience, I don't think we could have a higher level of input when you think about the bigger picture of the facilities assessments, the educational adequacy reports involving all the staffs of each building, all the principals, the administrators, the committee itself through what will be 15 meetings, a work group to design a process made up of 23 members to design a process for 7 independent listening and learning sessions, culminating in a final report to supplement the long-range facilities planning recommendation. I can't think of a more comprehensive process. Has it been perfect? No, it definitely hasn't. You've had 3 superintendents pick up this ball. But the important part is that we were able to carry out the process, and I think at a high level also. And having said that, I will go ahead and turn it to you if you have questions for me.
I just have one question. I'm trying to understand a little bit better the nature of the ODE deadline. Is that just because of that $4 million grant opportunity, or are there other constraints there?
No, that has to do specifically with the TAP grant, which is the Technical Assistance Program grant. We do get reimbursed, at least partially, for the work of the committee process. So we got a TAP grant to do the assessment.
Okay.
One's 20,000 and one's 25. I always get them confused. So the one's done and we received our funds, but we do have to have a report turned in, a long-range facility plan report turned in to receive that reimbursement on the TAP grant. The Awesome grant is a program, it's I think 3 or 4 years old now. A district our size would qualify for a $4 million Awesome grant if we pass a bond.
Okay.
But that doesn't have anything to do with the February 28th deadline.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
I just wanted to comment on the, oh, go ahead, Lori.
It's fine. I can wait, Jennifer. Thank you.
Okay. So something that struck me in both our policy discussion and this discussion was teamwork, people coming together that are, certainly bigger than these 7 people, bigger than, our administrative team. But, it took a lot of work to get all those people to come to those sessions, and it is amazing the volunteerism that we have looking at our policies, and that warms my heart. I think that we're more effective and we come together for our community. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, and Scott, I just want to say thanks to your leadership too, especially with our K-8 community work group, and having been part of the long-range facility planning committee too, there was always that question coming up that didn't get answers. It hasn't been answered in totality, in detail. What do our K-8 communities want? And I know myself and Jennifer and Jonathan got to sit in on the planning sessions for the work group, and there's no doubt in my mind that the representatives that were there, it's not every one of the communities, right, that we're getting at the listening sessions, but the representatives that were there, I talked to many of them, that they felt listened to. They felt, some for the first time that they've been in the district, which spans 20, 30 years, that they are heard, and that there was a very upbeat, positive, as to Jennifer's point, atmosphere and attitude of we're going to move forward together. But a lot of this has come from your leadership, so I appreciate all the hard work and determination that you put into this project, because it's been a pretty heavy lift. But it's one that, as I know, talking with you, this is a question that must be answered before we really can move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Lori, did you have something you wanted to add?
I have a question for Steve, I believe. I guess hypothetically, let's say that a bond passed. How long does a district have to wait before they can start utilizing the bond to take care of the needs in the district? Does it vary on the size of the bond or expectations from the state?
That's a great question, Lori, and I'll have to verify all the details on that, but it does take a little bit of time to get it, a vote validated, have it be become, closed and funded, because then there's a bond sale, so there's at least a few months after an election. Then of course, then there's the bidding and procurement that has to take place. It all depends also, I suppose, if you're going out in a May election or a November election too, and in terms of how it all lines out. If you were to pass in a November election, you might be able to get everything lined up for the following summer, for example, to start, whereas if it was May, you might be looking at going back around to the, 13 months. I know that there's a lot of factors involved with exactly when,
Sure.
and right now, obviously, too, with, supply shortages and labor and that type of thing, there could be other elements involved maybe that districts haven't encountered as strongly now that the districts in the past didn't have to deal with as much, but those are all factors in terms of timing. But right now, I know that if we were to, if the recommendations are passed to the board, and obviously it's the board's decision as to exactly what the structure, the amount, and the timing of a bond would be, probably the earliest that we could even consider it if everything moved forward, per this timeline, would be probably May of 2023, and that would be, pushing it. That would be pretty quick. It might be more like a November 2023, but we know there's also a lot of other factors involved with deciding what the right timing is, and the board could, be talking about that more as we move forward. But so yeah, I mean, even if there was say a November 2023 bond, and there was a new middle school, it might be 2025 or 2026 until that building is built and students are able to utilize it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I appreciate you explaining that, and because
you bet.
I never quite knew how the timeline worked on.
I think to add to that, the longer we wait, the more expensive it gets. The longer we wait, the more chances it is that we can't have kids in that middle school anymore. We have to have some place to put 400 kids. So yes, in our estimation, we think that May of 2023 would be when you would want to, just the earliest possible time, to even start considering what that might look like. But I do see a major sense of urgency here when we find out when that time is, that we have our work cut out for us. So I think that's worth considering as well.
Right.
Well, if I understood what I heard tonight correctly too, Scott, that, I mean, here we are in 2021, and it could be potentially another 4 to 5 years if a bond passed, and before that money could be directed into the needs of the district. And
well,
that's
it could
also
be
an
available.
interesting.
It could be available, and
I guess an
put
interesting
to use,
perspective as well.
Within 2
I
to
always
3 years.
just thought once it passed, you go for it. But that's not how it works, so.
Well, I would just.
Well, again, just to say,
Thank you.
There is a matter of a few months at least, at minimum, to validate the election, get the bond sold, and then have the money available. But then it comes down to bidding and procurement, starting the project. So the money could be available and ready for use, within 3 to 6 months. But there's a lot
good.
But by the time you get everything done and built, you know, you are definitely looking at some time.
And having gone through some of these before, sometimes, you know, when you're building a new structure like that, you know, your ability to, your timeline on that, it could be, you know, we could be likely looking at relocating our middle schoolers for a year while we build a new school. So that's another, and then when you try to fast track those things, your costs go up. And so sometimes you got this balance between time and money that you're playing with. So there's a lot of things to consider there.
And with obviously the middle school being the largest project of this, you know, that's not to say maybe after you pass it on, we have the funds, maybe some of the other projects as Kate schools couldn't start sooner because it's not a full tear down and redo from the ground up. Other projects could start sooner than say.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good point.
Lastly, I just wanted to mention what Jennifer started with, and that is the operative word being teamwork. Everything rises and falls on whether or not the team is effective, and no one person can get much done. And so I just want to make sure I publicly thank my team. They've been indispensable, without whom we wouldn't be able to get any of this done. Also with you, the board, I have so much gratitude for all of your support during this entire process, on many different levels. And then, of course, our volunteers who spend their time, as you have, as board members, to help us get our policies up to date. I just want to make sure I didn't forget that. Just this month, we received 38 policy updates from OSBA. That's in addition to the 5 months worth of work we have on the backlog. So you can imagine where we would be if we didn't have the volunteers on the teamwork helping us with these policy updates. They have been indispensable as well. So, thank you.
Well, thank you. Okay, anything else before we move on to the financial report?
No.
All right, Steve, you're up.
Thanks, Jonathan. The main issue obviously continues to be enrollment, and I did include an updated enrollment report as of 10/1, which correlates with our official reporting period to ODE, first period ADM. It is down 36 students from where it was the first couple weeks of school, from 3571 to 3535 district-wide, including the 2 charter schools. That's not a surprise. There's typically students that are rolled over from the end of last year that are in the system until 10 days, and they don't show up after 10 days, they get dropped. So I mentioned last month there's some reconciliation that was going on through the month of September. That pretty much brings us to where our low was last year, which is actually 5 below our low. It was 3540, and 28 below where we ended last year. And so we're still 400 or 10% below where we ended the 2019-20 school year. Schools range from a -2% to a -22%, so it's really different across the board. We did, as a reminder, see a bit of a downturn pre-COVID due to some downturn, cyclical downturn in town, and also some change out at Butte Creek that was pre-pandemic, so we kind of anticipated a small drop, but then of course the pandemic has to do with 80-85% of this drop. So the other side of the equation that we're still waiting on is the statewide impact. We will know that in about a month. The reporting to ODE for all 197 school districts is October 25th. Last year they updated the state school fund estimate for every school district on November 12th. Our November board meeting is the earliest we could possibly have it next month. It's on the 8th, so I'm not sure if we'll have that answer or not. I'll probably reach out to them the first week of November to see if they have an official statewide ADMW number for us or not. From the other districts we talked to, districts are ranging from 5 to 10% down, but then it really just becomes, you know, how many of those students went to, say, online charter academies that are still part of the state school fund pot and formula versus students that are out of the system now that went to private schools or homeschool, that type of thing, statewide. So, you know, I definitely don't believe that we'll see 10% drop in the state school fund number for ADMW, but it could easily be 4 or 5%. So that would help us offset our drop. But the goal in the next month is to put a firm dollar amount to the impact of this to us this year, and what potentially our new normal is moving forward, and what our budget looks like moving forward. On the financial statement, we got everyone on going on the payroll this month at the start of school, so you start to see more activity. But the biggest thing that you see is the big purple bar on the right of both the revenue and the expenditure report. Other sources of funds and other uses of funds, the $35 million. So that is specifically the PERS bond transaction that closed out in September and is now on the books. So it kind of throws our little comparative graphs out of whack, but it tells a story, and it's one we expect to see. So you can see that the budget bar in both the bottom left-hand corner, both statements, reflects the increased budget due to the PERS bond transaction, as well as the actual. And then the projected, the tool in FiveCast doesn't project that because it hasn't happened before, which I probably could have made it do it, but I thought this told a better story because it kind of shows, the green bar is where we're at compared to budget, apples to apples with the PERS bond in both, and then the projected assumes no PERS bond, so it would kind of show where we would normally be at, revenue and expense-wise. And then if you look at the graphs in the top right of each, you can see those specific object categories and source categories playing out apples to apples as well, with the outlier being on the far right. So I think it tells an accurate and maybe a slightly better, easier to understand story there. As we move forward, November, December, I will start also including information on other funds. We have our auditors coming in for their audit final field work next week. Actually, I think they'll be doing that virtually. We upload most things to the portal, but and then over November and December, we'll be finalizing the audited financial statement. So we'll most likely have that ready to present to you. It'll probably be at the January board meeting like it normally is. And next month, we will get the finance work group started again. We were hoping maybe to start that in October. My apologies. Janet, Jonathan, I sent a couple of calendar invites today for that, so starting in November. And yeah, I think that was about all for tonight. So,
what are we expecting in the way of American Recovery Act funds?
Mm-hmm. So that'll be part of some of these other fund reporting would be to tie in those federal stimulus dollars, which are ESSER 1, 2, and 3. We did utilize all of our ESSER 1 funds last year. That was the smallest amount. I think it was $362,000. We used that for our online learning platform, as well as some student devices to get to one-to-one, and for hotspots. And then ESSER $2 we started using towards the end of last year to help us with continued PPE needs, some additional nursing, lots of things related to the extra cleaning that we needed additional shifts for that and meeting all of our requirements. And ESSER 3 we actually haven't even started using yet. So ESSER 2 I believe is $1.4 million. ESSER 3 is a little over $3 million. ESSER 2 we have until September 30th, 2023 to expend those funds. ESSER 2 till September 2023. ESSER 3 through September 2024. Leslie and I are currently working. ESSER 3 is much more formalized than ESSER 1 and ESSER 2. We actually have to submit a plan. ODE has tied it in with our SIA plan in terms of engagement, planning, and we actually have to submit our plan by October 20th, so we're working on that right now. But a lot of that will be used for, some of that will actually be for continuity of operations. That's one of the allowable uses. So for example, where we've seen some of that enrollment decrease, and we're trying to address learning loss, so maybe there's not as many FTE in the district, but maybe we're not quite to where we would need to be if we're down 400 kids, say, next year, because we didn't know how many kids were going to walk in the door. That will help us a little bit. What was the other major category? We were going to look at some more ventilation. So we did spend some of the beginning of our ESSER II dollars on those portable filtration systems where they were needed, but we're getting an assessment done right now by Amoresco, who helped us with the lighting project, to look at more of the permanent ventilation systems in the buildings as well, because that was one of the big ones in ESSER III. And there was one other main area that we had talked about. I'm drawing a blank on, but it, like the high school, for example, they purchased this tent. The middle school is renting a tent, to provide more covered area so we can get more social distancing for eating, for example, those types of things. There's a lot of different things that have come up that we say, hey, we could use a little help with this or that, and each school has some of the same needs, and each school has a little different needs depending on the configuration of their building.
So after you submit the plan, are you required to report back how those funds were spent after the fact?
Yeah, there are
Is there
reporting
some?
periods.
There are,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll provide some more information to you next month on the plan that we submit
Okay.
for ESSER III, and I'll also have some spending reports on ESSER II. Again, we're in the beginning stages of that, but absolutely.
That'd be great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Steve?
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. That moves us to item 11, board reports, and we do have one tonight. Jennifer's asked to talk to us about upcoming superintendent evaluation items.
Yeah, so next regular meeting is one of those check-in periods for the superintendent evaluation, and so in the timeline, it talked about that there could be executive session for feedback, but Scott, I just wanted to remind everybody, Scott has requested that his evaluation sessions be held in public, and I think that's a great example of, it sets a great example for the idea of giving and getting feedback, which is something we hope to permeate the district. And then I wanted to say that members do have the opportunity to give feedback on that date on 11/8. But in order to keep with our no surprises agreement, please make sure you've talked to Scott about feedback ahead of the meeting. So it shouldn't be the first time he's hearing feedback during the meeting or specific, that specific feedback. And then as you think about potential feedback, it might be helpful to consult the standards. And again, every evaluation that happens in our district is tied to standards. So we're kind of, doing what everybody else is doing when we do that. So that's my report.
Thank you. Questions for Jennifer? Okay. That takes us to our second public comment, which is specific to discussion and action items. Don't have anybody in the audience. Anybody online would like to address the board tonight?
Maybe give it another 15, 20 seconds for anyone to raise a hand using the raise a hand feature in Zoom, on Zoom. I'm not seeing any.
Okay. Well, we are going to move into our action items, which is essentially one. There's a number of them listed, and they're all the final readings of policies tonight. And as has been recent practice, we're going to go ahead and vote on them as a block unless somebody requests right now to pull one out. Okay, well with that, I would accept a motion to adopt all of the policies listed in final reading on the board agenda.
I move to adopt all of the final draft or final reads of the policies that we have on the agenda tonight.
Second.
And seconded. Any further discussion? Right? Debbie?
Jonathan?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Tom?
Aye.
Aaron?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Owen?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor?
All right, guys, thanks. So that brings us to item 14, future agenda item request. Anybody have anything they want to add tonight? Going once, going twice, okay. With that, we are going to move into executive session under ORS 1926602F to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection, specifically a sick leave bank request. We will likely be 5 to 10 minutes, at which point we will return back to regular open session. All right, I think we are returning to regular open session, and we have one item remaining, consideration of a sick leave bank request.
I move to approve a sick leave bank request for up to 25 days for Danielle Andres. Andres. Am I just saying it right?
Andres.
Andres.
I'll second that motion.
Yes.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
Right?
Jonathan?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Tom?
Aye.
Aaron?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Owen?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor?
In favor. Well, thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. Without objection, meeting adjourned.